For 2 years, Ukraine built something that never showed up on any public map, 300 kilometers long. And until this week, almost nobody outside the military even knew it existed. What do you build in secret for 2 years when your enemy has seemingly unlimited soldiers and you don't? Putin has a dream. Novorossiya, the old imperial project of folding eastern and southern Ukraine back onto Russia's map. As recently as late June, he defined his objective as the complete liberation of Donbass and Novorossiya. Zelensky summed up exactly where that map extends in a single sentence. If Putin takes Donbass, he won't stop. The next targets would be Dnipro and Kakhovka. Today's video is about Ukraine's actual answer to that dream. Not soldiers' bodies, but concrete. Welcome back. Let's start with the bitter lesson that made this wall necessary in the first place. When Ukrainian defenses collapsed at Ochrytine and shortly after at Novohorodivka in the summer of 2024, an uncomfortable truth emerged. Classic trench lines dug into open fields had stopped working. When troop numbers fell short, those trenches sat empty. And an empty trench stops nobody. Ukrainian command responded with a radical shift in doctrine. The new approach would rely not on soldiers' bodies, but on obstacles themselves and camouflaged firing positions. 2 years later, the concrete result of that decision became public through an analysis by French open-source analyst Clément Mollin. A continuous defensive system stretching roughly 300 kilometers, from Izium in Kharkiv region to Orikhiv in Zaporizhia region. The anatomy of this line is practically a masterclass in military engineering. In its most heavily fortified sections, it begins with a row of barbed wire, followed by 3 rows of concrete anti-tank obstacles, dragon's teeth linked together by steel cables and further protected by barbed wire. Then 2 anti-tank ditches lined with barbed wire, and yet another row of wire. An obstacle belt that reaches up to 100 meters wide in total. Additional wire has been strung across open fields, riverbanks have been secured, roads have been blocked with flanking trenches specifically designed to channel enemy movement into designated kill zones. At least 67 fortified crossings have been counted along the line, 13 of them concentrated in the single most dangerous 61-kilometer stretch between the Vovcha River and Orikhiv. By Mollin's own estimate, the true number is 3 to 5 times higher, since bunkers hidden in forests, deep-set dugouts, and urban firing positions simply can't be counted from satellite imagery. Think of it less as a single line and more as a layered filter, forcing an attacker to fight through each layer individually while remaining under observation and fire the entire time. Urban defense has changed just as fundamentally. Towns are no longer isolated fortresses where the front line simply ends. They're fortified from every direction, built for circular defense and drone operations, functioning as integrated nodes within the wider system. The real purpose of this architecture is to multiply Ukraine's scarcest resource. Along the line, there's a road roughly every 5 to 10 kilometers, which means monitoring a 100-kilometer sector only requires focusing on 10 to 20 critical choke points. Fewer soldiers directly on the front line, while drone operators and unmanned ground vehicle crews further back hold vast stretches of terrain remotely. It's essentially the same logic we've already seen with remote-controlled ground robots clearing buildings around Kupiansk, just scaled up from a single operation into the organizing principle for hundreds of kilometers of front all at once. The line's effect on the wider war hasn't been fully felt yet. The section currently touching active combat is only about 8 kilometers long, roughly 1% of the total length. Russia has already flown more than 25 airstrikes against these fortifications. It hasn't managed a breakthrough yet, but a major assault is only a matter of time. The first signs are already visible. Russian troops are attempting to infiltrate an unfinished section near the Shevchenko sector, close to Drobyshev. Right now, as this video is being made, that exact spot is the live test of whether the concept actually holds under real pressure before it's even fully built. The precedent is encouraging though. Even the unfinished section near Ivanivka held for 9 months, right up through the current counteroffensive. These lines don't replace soldiers, but they inflate the cost of every Russian advance so severely that the offensive itself loses its tactical value. And that exact principle is already visible in a living example. Dnipropetrovsk. Russian troops entered this region in June 2025, officially justified as a buffer zone, but its real value was symbolic. Dnipropetrovsk, sitting outside the four regions Moscow claims to have annexed, was meant to become a brand new showcase, proof the war was expanding. Just how deep that obsession ran is captured in one scene the Ukrainian General Staff described dryly. A small Russian reconnaissance group infiltrated the village of Dakhny specifically to take a photo with the Russian tricolor. In the General Staff's own words, that was their last action. The group was annihilated. Ukraine's response came in complete silence. The Oleksandrivka counteroffensive, launched in late January, ran under a total media blackout for months. When the silence finally broke, it revealed the largest territorial liberation operation of the entire four-year war. 26 settlements, 745 square kilometers across 3 regions. Even the Institute for the Study of War's own more conservative measurement confirms at least 627 square kilometers. And according to General Staff sources speaking to Suspilny, the Dnipropetrovsk region has now been virtually entirely cleared of Russian troops. The only place still contested is the village of Dakhny itself. The final act of that clearing operation was written in Andriivka-Klevtsove, sitting right on the administrative border with Dnipropetrovsk. For months, Russia had tried to seize this village using small assault teams of 2 or 3, infiltrating, gaining whatever foothold they could, with fresh units following behind. On the independent deep state map, the village itself was never marked as under Russian control, but its eastern outskirts had long been a gray zone, with infiltration groups having penetrated deep inside. So this wasn't a straightforward liberation from occupation. It was a grinding mop-up operation, and that's exactly where the real difficulty lies. Rooting out small, dispersed groups hiding inside a settlement is far more exhausting than stopping a battalion in open terrain. The 3rd Special Operations Forces Regiment led the clearing. Released footage shows Special Forces sweeping block by block, uprooting Russian squads from their positions. 30 Russian soldiers surrendered and were taken prisoner. Those who resisted were neutralized. Today, the Ukrainian flag flies over the village once again. And set against the flag photo eagerness at Dakhny, the sheer contrast in how these two armies relate to their own flags says something on its own about which direction this war is actually moving. None of this means the wall alone decides the war. 300 kilometers of concrete doesn't solve a manpower problem on its own, and 745 square kilometers doesn't single-handedly settle an entire front. But the thesis connecting both stories is the same. Time no longer automatically favors whoever simply waits it out. It favors whichever side actually does something with that time. Pouring concrete, building drones, retaking ground. While the other side keeps missing its own deadlines for the same stretch of Donbass. Russia can keep announcing a new date for final victory in Donbass as many times as it wants. Every deadline that slips only buys Ukraine more time to keep expanding exactly this kind of infrastructure, before the next major assault is even attempted. A 300-kilometer wall built quietly over 2 years currently touches only about 1% of the active front. A single village, Andriivka, already shows what happens once the system behind that wall actually gets put to use. If an unfinished defensive line can hold for 9 months, and Russia can simultaneously lose an entire region it wanted as proof of Novorossiya, how much longer does the Kremlin actually need before it realizes it isn't fighting empty trenches anymore,